So why are we here today? Well, we're here because Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network really took the time to listen to the farmers in our network, which includes a lot of you. And what we heard loud and clear is that farmers learning from other farmers about how they're dealing with climate change, about how they're moving towards climate resilience is really what works best. As a statewide network, we really felt like this virtual space seemed like a great place for us to start. And as my colleague, Dominica Navarro Martinez, who's here, and I were brainstorming about what these sessions could look like, we knew we really wanted to create an interactive, engaging learning space. So that's our goal for today, to create a space to learn from each other. And while Ben and Becca, who I'll introduce in a moment, will be leading the conversation and sharing their expertise and their farm story, they've made really clear from step one that they want to hear from you all as well. And so with that in mind, we'd really love for folks to keep their cameras on whenever possible. We encourage you to ask questions. You can do that in the chat, or we'll provide space for you to do that live. And just a reminder that we will be breaking out into smaller groups a couple of times to have discussions. And as we engage in those discussions throughout today's session, we really want to create a safer space for a lot of different kinds of farmers and producers. I hope that as we all engage in conversation, we do so with respect for others, by listening with curiosity, that we speak from our own personal experiences, and let's allow time for others to share. And what I'm most excited about here too is that you all are really the innovators. And I want to recognize that we have gathered here today people who really have care for the land in common. Thank you for all the incredible work you do, and again, for carving out some time today. A few Zoom logistics, if you have any Zoom challenges, Dominica can do the best she can from where she's at to help troubleshoot. Looks like most folks have updated their Zoom name, but make sure that's there. And I thought maybe we could just do a quick practice using the chat function. Some folks have introduced themselves, but I know the days are growing longer and we're kind of heading quickly into summer, but I thought we could just enter in what spring farm activity you're really excited about doing right now. So just answer in the chat. So again, it's just whatever you're excited about that's happening for spring right now. Irrigation. Oh, wow. That's exciting, Sharon, waiting for some lambs. Oh, love these ideas of seedlings and spring green. All right. It looks like we're doing a good job of using the chat. So we'll keep that up as we keep going. Let's see. And then we're really gathered here from farmers across the state. We've seen a little bit of that in the chat already. But if we could start that poll number 2 and folks could answer, you know, what region and crop type they're using, that would be great. All right, so yeah, first that region. Just let us know where you're coming from today. Exciting to see the note about purple sprouting broccoli in the chat. I walked by a neighbor's today that was just fully loaded. I was like, someone needs to come out and harvest that purple sprouting broccoli. Great. Let's see, what kind of crops do you farm? All right, we're just about there with everyone answering this poll. So I'm gonna end that poll and share it out. So can you all see that? Who's in the room? Yeah, so we got a good showing from the Willamette Valley, Little Southern Oregon, Oregon coast, and a nice mix of vegetables, livestock, fruit and orchard, some hay and grains. Cool. Thank you all for coming. I love it. And with that, I thought that it would be fun for us to go into quick breakout rooms. looks like we got a new addition to the room. Excited to see Stephanie Payne coming in. But we just wanted you to get to know each other really quickly. So we're going to put you into just a breakout room with one other person to introduce yourself, and maybe ask that other person what questions they're bringing to this event tonight, or what you're hoping to learn out of our session tonight. And with that, we'll go into breakout rooms. Welcome back. Hey, everybody, welcome back. How did that go? Excellent. Maybe you could write in the chat if you heard something particular from the person that you talked to about what they want to learn today, or a fun fact in the chat. We, Dominica and I missed out on the introduction, so we don't have that same insight. Nice. New plants to the pastures. Excellent. New forestry projects. Yes, no-till successes and pitfalls. Love it. Thanks, everybody. I really appreciate that. I thought I would just, as things trickle in, go over our outline really quickly today, and then really hand things over to Becca and Ben. But basically for the next, 35, 40 minutes, my brother's farm is gonna help lead the conversation about what they've been doing on their farm. I'm really excited. And then we're gonna go out into smaller breakout rooms to discuss some of the questions that I shared ahead of time. And we'll have some guides for you to help with that. And then we'll all come back into the big room to share what we learned and kind of close things up. So with that, I'll give a quick intro to my brother's farm. Again, I'm just really excited to be in conversation with them today. They're a diversified ranch, orchard, and riparian forest. As you saw in the chat, they've been raising bison for quite some time, and up to lots of great projects. They have an incredibly holistic approach about their farm. I really love their passion for experimentation, for learning, for ecology. And, I know you're not supposed to pick favorites, but you guys make the best tasting hazelnuts that I've ever had. So with that, I'm going to pass it along to you all. If folks have questions in the chat, type them in, and we can pause for questions at different points too. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you, Ashley.
Yeah. So my brother's farm, we steward 320 acres of land stolen from the Winnefelli tribe along the coast fork of the Willamette River in the South Valley. This was done through legalizing land claims in 1850 for white men, thereby capitalizing on stolen land within a society that demonizes theft. Then the US government worked to ratify treaties that would remove the Winnefelli and other Kalapuyan people off the vast majority of their ancestral lands. Despite enormous concessions by the tribes, Congress did not ratify the treaty in 1851 because they've had to buy back claimed land from settlers. In 1855, about 400 Kalapuyans were all that had survived disease and genocide, and they were forcibly removed from the Willamette Valley. Fast forward 126 years later to when my grandparents bought the land from where my parents later moved out to raise their family in 1989. The fields of 220 or so acres were in conventional annual ryegrass seed production until 2013, after my brothers decided they wanted to be farmers and began transitioning the land into our farming operation, which now includes orchards, a ranch, and riparian forest. So yeah, we've been at the farming game for almost 10 years now, and have tried to do a lot of our planning at the forefront as farmers do. But yeah, went into the experience with kind of unique, like multiple people were all excited to start a farm together, and we had the land already as just kind of set as something we could use and transition into off of the ryegrass. So
parents said yes, but they never thought we'd stay. Here we are.
yeah, it's been a journey for sure. We've transitioned now all of the ryegrass fields into our farming operation just this last year. We took back the last one, and so yeah, part of our initial thoughts on what we were going to do was based around, well, we're transitioning away from ryegrass, so we figured we should get some large bovine, and bison ended up being what we chose, and so we've had quite a bit of fencing to build, since they're a bit rambunctious, and would be a pretty big deal if they were to get out onto Cloverdale Road or something. So yeah, but yeah, please feel free to stop us along the way. We're happy to take questions as they come up, and yeah, excited to hear about all your operations as well.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen, and it's just gonna kind of show where we're at in the valley, down there on the southern end of the Willamette Valley. And here's what our farm looks like. I had a friend make this map for us last year for one of our agritourism events. So yeah, we started with taking back these pastures and planting an orchard here and in here. So our apples are down here, and then also mixed into our hazelnuts, and the gardens just past the house. And then we have about 3/4 of a mile of river access along the property edge. And yeah, we'll get into that a bit later, but those have also, we've got about 100 acres of forest on top of the 220 of transitioned ryegrass seed fields.
And can I interject here?
Of course.
So when he says taking back, he means that, so all of the pasture, including where the orchards now are, were used in annual ryegrass production for like golf courses and seed. And so when we started, obviously we couldn't manage the whole property at once. So we would take back a little section at a time. So we started with that middle pasture that he indicated, and kind of would take back or start working with an area piece by piece. And so when some of the things that we do when we start working with an area is we use the bison to graze it down. Well, first we have to build fence, and we have to get water out there, which is a lot of infrastructure. But yeah, and then use the bison to graze it down, and then use a no-till drill to plant in perennial pasture mix after a few years of the bison grazing the ryegrass. We also planted hazelnut orchards and apple orchards, the apples with the intention of doing hard cider in the future. And then the hazelnuts, I mean, because the soil type was right for hazelnuts where we were at. And then another really interesting piece of the farm is a lot of the riparian areas are enrolled in restoration. So we'll get into talking about some of the partnerships that we've utilized over the years to enable us to do a lot of this stuff through some grants and through these restoration projects that has kind of gotten us to where we're at. So yeah, we started with a lot, and we're trying to continue to work with all of the gifts we have been given over the years, but that's kind of, and then there's pigs too, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, and kind of key to what Becca was getting at as far as the restoration projects is this creek that runs through the middle of the property. Is we have a lot of what is called riparian forest is next to waterways, and so it's eligible for a lot of funding from your local watershed council, as well as the river access. So yeah, we have, here's just like an overhead view of the farm a while ago before some of our more recent projects were underway, but yeah, we grew up out here, and it's just like so beautiful, and so it's been such a easy thing to just like stay here and want to make it better. So it's been a lot of learning from the land and just being patient with our systems and taking it slow to figure out what actually works. So
yeah, for example, we started with just like a baker's dozen of bison, so 13, a breeding bull and different genetics, and like grew the herd slowly from there. So we could learn how to work with them and what they needed and what worked and what didn't. So yeah, that was one of the big recommendations, is starting small and growing. So we didn't plan for a lot of profits the first few years, obviously, with any farm. And then the hazelnuts, I mean, they take a good part of a decade to get into full production. So the orchards itself, but that's allowed us a lot of time to experiment and to learn along the way. So
yeah, so from the get-go, kind of, we wanted to recognize that the farm itself is, you know, a whole thing that we have to manage. And so I don't know, we read some books on holistic planning together and listened to a lot of traditional ecological knowledge and just like lots of information that is available as far as like how landscapes exist and how we can have a positive impact in them and still get a product out that we can bring to market. So yeah, it was kind of easy for us as a farm to envision a lot of what we were going to do because we knew what our land base looked like. And so we were able to be like, okay, let's take the forests and well, let's take the ryegrass fields and graze that grass, and then put trees on the best soil that we have for growing orchard crops. And then the forests, we were able to get a lot of our infrastructure paid for by fencing off the forest as part of restoration projects. So yeah, kind of thinking about how all the pieces flow together is like really crucial to having it work efficiently and accessing programs that are going to help fund the projects that you want to do as a farm. So yeah, just thinking about the farm as an ecosystem, and having our systems overlap whenever possible, essentially. Like using animals in orchards is an excellent way to add nutrients and also reduce pest populations. And yeah, there's just so many advantages of having a diversity within your systems, not just having multiple systems, but having them talk to each other as an ecosystem. So yeah, one thing that you have to plan for as a farm is natural disasters. On the left here was the fire season a couple years ago, when the smoke was just abhorrent and we weren't getting a lot of farming done, but we're still having to do the essential things like taking care of the herd. So yeah, the fires luckily didn't get to our doorstep. We had some evacuees at the farm, but there was not the fear of the flames actually getting onto our land. And so we were lucky that time. Similarly lucky in this picture to the right, when Brother Austin had to go out on kayak to move the herd from what we thought was the highest pasture, but we later found during this flood that it was the pasture just to the west that was actually higher. So he went out there and cut the fence lines at somewhere that the water wasn't too rushing, and the bison were on an island and they were realizing the water was still rising, and so they followed him over and we survived that one too.
They actually waited for him to cut we use high tensile electric fences, and I think these were 4 to 6 strand fences, and they had to go through about 3 different sets of fences to get to the high ground. And each time they followed him on the kayak, they waited for him to actually like go under the water with bolt cutters and cut the fence and pull it back, and then went through. And it could have been a lot worse had they that's one of the reasons we love the bison, is because they're super intelligent beings, and work with us. They and didn't try and kill him, so it worked out. Now we know where we're going to move him next time.
Yeah, but there's only been a few disasters. Most of the time it looks something like this. This is actually from the same location as that last picture, when the waters were much more receded. This is our pond that dries up seasonally and is due to get planted with a bunch of woody species this winter, which we're looking forward to. So yeah, just gonna get into our practices a little bit. So for the bison, we are pretty firm believers that silvopasture, having trees in pasture, is a net benefit. Not only to provide the bison a scratching post and some shade to keep them from burning too much energy, but the trees can also benefit from the nutrients that you bring to them, especially if those trees that you're trying to bring are cropped for you. So on the picture on the right here, you can see we're trying to establish some trees, those blue tubes to the left of the bison, just right up to where the bison are grazing. So we're actually reducing our mowing, and hopefully when the trees are old and mature, we expect that the bison will prefer to be closer to the trees and be bringing nutrients to the trees as a form of fertilizer for us. And yeah, you can see this is one of our irrigated pastures, and we planted the trees in here so that we could fully utilize the water. But yeah, we only have about 35 or so, 35 acres of our pastures in irrigation, and we do that pretty minimally. It's not something that we want to be running our diesel pump all summer long just to try and keep perennial grasses green into the late summer. It's just so much water they can suck up. So as an alternative, I don't have a picture to pull up here, but we have been planting some warm season grasses like Sudan grass, and it's been great having some August grazing, July, August, September. It's just like lush and green with like 1 or 2 waters on it, sometimes not even any. So yeah, getting through that summer drought is the hardest part for us usually, and that's the one time of year that we've had to buy in hay. But we're hoping with more silvopasture systems that can reduce the amount of water evaporating from the grass, we can extend our grazing season in tandem with some irrigation and warm season grasses.
Well, the other thing about the silvopastures, bison don't just eat grass, like they get a lot of different variety in their diet by going into the woods and kind of help keep the brush level down, which is cool. Which is better for fire control or danger management. And then they get a little bit of a medicinal paddock depending on where they're at, and different variety in their diets as well. So it's another reason we like to put them in fields with trees. That's the more established woody areas, but there's a few places on the farm that we're able to do that. Not everywhere, but those are their favorite paddocks, undoubtedly.
And we have a question in the
trees.
chat. Oh, maybe my video
Yeah.
is off. Oh, we just had a couple of questions in the chat. I think you're going to get there with the pigs here, but maybe in a second we can answer Sharon's question. But go ahead.
Cool. Yeah. Next up, we have our pigs featured in the hazelnut orchard. We have been participating in 3 years, I believe, actually, of a grant with University of Oregon and Hallett Lab at U of O, studying the impact of pig grazing in oaks and hazelnuts. Oaks are the native host to the filbert worm, and they just decimate your crop if you're not careful. So what we've been experimenting with and has shown to have positive results is the pigs, running them through after nut fall and cleaning up the largely wormy nuts, and just keeping that pest population in check. With the hazelnuts, it's a little more difficult than in the oaks because we have to deal with food safety. So we don't run the pigs out there until after the nuts have dropped, and we've picked up as many as we're going to. So yeah, there's a chance that the worm will like crawl out before we get to actually get in there and graze them. But in the nearby oaks, we can keep them in there up until we're ready to move them into the hazelnuts, essentially. And So yeah, the pigs are able to pick up quite a few acorns, and it just like makes delicious meat and also reduces our filbert worm reinfestations from the neighboring oaks, because we're not interested in removing those oaks, but they do supply habitat for filbert worm. And so they're something that you also want to think about managing, even though they're not maybe what some people would say is in their farming system.
Yeah, I know Michelle had a question about the pigs and the damage to the hazelnut trees. So our trees that we're running them through are still relatively young. So we do a lot of like supervised grazing. So in that top right picture, we set up their paddock with like little polywire electric and put their feeder and their water in that. So that's where they would go and hang out. And then we set out a little single strand electric fence around different sections of the orchard, and we would have to go out and kind of shepherd them and like be like, no, 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 don't eat that. But they got so many of the nuts that were left over after harvest. And I think as the trees get bigger, it'll be less of an issue. But the other thing about our hazelnuts that's nice is that we don't keep a perfectly manicured floor. We try and plant a lot of cover crops in the hazelnut orchards. There's grasses that grow tall at times. And we've
Here.
tried doing like, oh yeah. So we don't keep a perfectly manicured floor. So if there's a hole here and there, we're all right with it. We'd rather have the pigs kind of like go out and do the sanitization, I guess you could say, and the fertilization by pooping out there, and contributing to that soil health as the trees are growing. We've experimented with using a vacuum harvester out there, a different form of harvesting that doesn't require the orchard floor to be perfectly manicured. It's labor intensive, but for smaller orchards, it is kind of a nice option because then you can have more organic material at the base. But yeah, they do damage. You can't leave them out there forever. And so we kind of like set up their paddock adjacent, let them out during the day, fingers crossed. Oh, we might lose a tree, little planting here and there, or they dig up a little bit more than we would like to, but and we move them through pretty quickly. So they're more focused on the nuts rather than starting to dig and burrow and stuff like that. And we do it when it's as dry as possible. If it's super wet.
Yeah, dry is important. And it's mostly like the age of the tree. Once they're up like 5 or 6 years, it's not a concern. Our reason we kind of struggle with it is we've had a few losses in the orchard and had to replant them. And so then they go out that are freshly replanted and tear those down. So having all your trees up before moving pigs in is a good idea, especially if the pigs are big and wanting to root around. But we haven't found that they've done like huge amounts of rooting. They generally like target the nuts, and once they run out of nuts, they'll definitely start rooting up. But they vastly prefer the hazelnut and acorn to whatever else they can find.
Yeah. And the other question in the chat about the geranium, we do see that in places. I think our solution is kind of trying to outcompete it. Fortunately for us, where the blackberries kind of get beat back, we have to mow the blackberries a few times. We're getting a lot of grasses that pop up, but there are certainly parts of the silvopasture that have that spotty geranium. But we still continue to use that area for shade and scratching and other forages in the brush. Our solution to weeds is like to try and outcompete it most of the time. So you have to we try and put something else there to take its place. But yeah, that one's tricky. It's cute,
Yeah,
but not very.
and also just like having proper rest periods is really important for that competition. So we're really glad that we've been able to get up to about 40 pastures now so we can have those proper rest periods where we can move the animals to really graze something down and then not have them return there for months, hopefully, depending on the time of year. But yeah, that allows if there is grass there to like really get up and out compete the whatever the other thing you're concerned about. But yeah, we have seen a lot of shining geranium at our place and are looking for ways to remove it as well. So yeah, this is a picture of our hazelnut orchard that I took today. We haven't really done a lot out there this year, besides we pruned in January and February, and I put one foliar spray on the trees with some like fish hydrosolate and evaporated seawater with the salt removed. So like soil applications or anything, but it's just been pruning and some mulching of baby trees thus far, and getting ready to do our first mow when this clover is in full flower or just past. I like to really get it up and knock it back when we feel we're ready to do that. But yeah, it hasn't been a big thing that we feel like we have to get out there in March or anything. And as long as we maintain a tree ring, like a weed-free area around our younger trees, so they don't deal with too much competition. But yeah, that's our orchard, part of our hazelnut orchard. Next up, we've got a tall cover crop in the garden. I guess we can talk briefly about the garden here. It's not really hasn't really been a major part of our business since we started. If you can remember from the picture I showed earlier, the garden makes up just like a little 2.5 acre section of the farm. And so it's been pretty experimental. I realized after tilling for a year that I didn't want to deal with the hoeing and just like soil quality loss that I was noticing. So have moved to some really heavy cover cropping, and then I've just like been mowing the cover crop down when it's really well developed, maybe even further than this, and then like sweeping it into windrows, so it gets like a 20-foot wide swath into like a single bed. So it's not the most efficient way to use land, it feels like, but it's been wonderful as a way to set up a no-till system that is not reliant on outside inputs. And yeah, it's with that much mulch, it's like a really good weed suppression and also like water retention. So I've been experimenting a lot with some dry farming trials with OSU on some corn and tomato, and I've done some squash as well, and have had decent results. Not the highest yields for sure, but we're also, I feel like, really still in the work of repairing our soil from the annual plowing that it was used to, and the agrochemicals that the grass was reliant on. So yeah, working on just building up the carbon in the soil and crossing our fingers. But there's been some really like great things that have come out of it. Like we do a big fall festival, pumpkin patch later in the year, and having something like that for us that's not a bunch of work to maintain is like really important, because how many other projects we have going on. So though it hasn't been the most efficient use of space, maybe it's a really small amount of space for us on our operation size, and it's been efficient time wise, I would say, but the jury's still out on that one. On the right, we have
Well, I was just going to speak on how important it is to grow our own food here in our local economies, and that's something that we want to get people more inspired about. I think we're all kind of sick of depending on importing all of our food and being reliant on these big systems, and so it just felt, wrong to not plant food as much as you can, and just see what takes and see what doesn't, and continue to move forward, because I think all of us here recognize how important that is for our futures.
Totally. So yeah, a lot of our systems are honestly very we're experimenting, and there's been some, I mean, we do our research, but it's amazing how, as all of you know, that how much the context of your farm matters to what you can do, what you want to do. But yeah, so on the right here, this was when Melissa from Extension came out and helped us some forage samples, just to help us try to train our eye to like how much forage is in this section, so that you can start kind of thinking about what your rotations are going to look like and how long you can keep animals in a certain spot, and just like planning for that based on what you see. So yeah, this was a cool, we just made a little 4-foot square that we took all the sample or all the clippings from and dried them down and calculated the dry matter equivalent, and we're able to estimate how much forage was on any given pasture that way.
Yeah. But Melissa's been a wonderful resource over the years, working with our extension agencies. The OSU she's turned us on to a lot of good talks and research, and is just a big supporter of our operation. And we're really grateful to Melissa in particular from OSU for everything she's taught us over the years.
What's her last name again? It starts with an F, right? Ferry?
Yeah, Melissa Ferry.
Yeah, okay. Here's a picture of one of our restoration projects. So on the picture on the left here, you can see the Willamette River just on the edge of the property. And there's not a good picture of it here, but there's a big cut bank that the river turns into as it goes around the corner. And prior to us taking over the operation, this was farmed, plowed up to the pretty close to the edge there, and we've lost a good bit of bank since we took over the operation. But yeah, our first like restoration project on the farm was this one on the right. You can see a bunch of little, maybe second year saplings of about 100 different native species. And up to this date, we've planted just north of 100,000 trees and shrubs along riparian areas.
Native trees and shrubs.
And they have, also been in tandem with some fencing projects. So we were able to get the trees and shrubs paid well as some fencing. You can see off on the right there, on the very leftmost of the picture, you can see some fence posts and texture out to the left that got paid for. And that was in working with a number of partner agencies, including NRCS, the FSA, Farm Service Agency, and largely the Coast Fork Watershed Council, as well as some other partners.
We didn't do all of the planting. They were able to contract out a lot of that work to help get these plants in the ground. It was a pretty big project, but they were 30 different types of native forest species spaced about in the spacing you see. And I think how many acres total have been enrolled in the restoration, Ben?
So we've basically done all of our forests at this point, so about 120 acres, because of the way the land was kind of farmed before we moved here. The forests were the wet areas that he didn't want to plow, and the fields were what we converted into pasture. So the forests were pretty heavily dominated by Himalayan blackberry in the understory, and so that's been a big part of the restoration, has been removing that on about 100 acres and expanding our riparian buffers from the waterways to an additional about 20 acres.
And that's a big reason why they picked our farm for some of these projects, is because upriver is state land, so it could continue the greenway to shade for fish habitat and continue kind of that greenway along the river. And then, like Ben pointed out at the beginning, any water that you have on your place, they often will pay for fencing to keep animals and livestock out of it. So we've capitalized on that as we were getting things built, and that was been a big benefit for us. And I think a lot of those are through NRCS, those fencing grants mostly.
Yeah, we did like a CREP project too. So yeah, part of the farm is this actually section on the right there is currently being leased to the feds, and they pay us like $110 an acre for like farmable land. So yeah, this kind of gets at like our as landowners to like be able to think about these like long-term projects as benefit to us. So yeah, that's something we always try and keep in mind, is like, you know, like we don't want to think like we're figuring this out for everyone. Like there are so many systems that don't allow this work to be done for people that can't access, you know, like every single piece of this that has gotten us to this point. So yeah, but we are so grateful that we've been able to think about the long-term vision of the farm, because not only does it allow us to have these like beautiful forests that we can go walk through and harvest random things from, except not in the crap areas, because they're being leased still by the feds. But in the also in our orchard establishment, like we have kind of taken a slow approach on establishing the trees. We're not feeding them a lot of nutrients. We're letting them get most of their own with a little bit of added foliar feeding, as I was talking about earlier, and some wood chips we use to maintain a weed-free zone around the base of the younger trees, as well as add mycology into the mix of what the trees can start doing in the soil. And it even goes into our, well, so on the trees, like we grow slightly smaller or slower trees, but big advantage of that is that we're going to have stronger trees that have like tighter rings and have less growth and are less prone to breakage, which we've part of our operation is leasing an additional 32 acres of organic hazelnuts down the road from our place. And that's been really helpful for getting our hazelnut operation going so that we can actually get our nuts processed, because the processors have such large minimums. But yeah, we over there a few years ago with an ice storm, right after we finished pruning, it looked like a bomb went off in there and we had to go clean up the whole thing again. It was a very, very poor yield that year. So yeah, looking for ways to just increase the resilience of your systems in whatever ways yeah, I'm sure this is pretty regular for anybody that has pasture land, but we also don't fertilize those, and we just kind of let grow what grows and try and get the animals to eat it before it goes into seed making. So yeah, we just like really value the thinking about the whole process as something that we don't really control the speed of, but it's happening and we can find intervention points along the way to recover a crop off of, or, you know, the very real financial return that you have to make as a farmer. But yeah, that kind of in tandem with, by having like lower inputs, you're able to reduce your costs. We found we're actually participating in a cost of production analysis. We got a SARE grant to check out what it costs to grow organic hazelnuts, and it's too soon to share any like hard data, but it's just really got me thinking about like how little we actually do compared to a conventional farm. So yeah, just like wanting really strongly to like manage the land locally and not have to rely on outside inputs, as we've seen have gotten very expensive, at least for conventional farmers lately. And I mean, it was already way too expensive for organic. So yeah, it's just
Ben, you've
something
covered
that feels.
You've covered so much good ground. I do want to make sure we maybe plug in a couple questions, and just really appreciate this big view that we've gotten of the farm so far. Is there like any last things that you want to touch on before we go into questions really quickly?
I'll just finish a couple slides here.
Okay.
One other thing is like we've used a bunch of old tires to build our troughs and corrals, so saving money. These were free. And then here's some pictures of our pumpkin patch that we have people out sometime. The hayride, we kind of might get back to it someday, but yeah, just getting people out to get familiar and ask questions and share excitement and build community has been a really vital part to having this work be enjoyable and fulfilling. Yeah, but leave it at that.
Love it. Thank you so much. Do folks have any questions right now? We have some questions from the registration we can go to, but yeah, we got a hand raise. Chonky.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Ben. I'm wondering, you guys talked about when you start up, you were doing it slow and all that. And so I was wondering, how do you find enough cash flow to pay for the mortgage? It's a huge farm, right? I'm sure. So how do you get that going in your first couple of years when there isn't a lot of income from your produce, but your time clock is still ticking?
Yeah, totally. So we were lucky enough to have the land available to us. My parents were already living here for about 25 years prior to us deciding to want to become farmers. So yeah, they've been very helpful in just like allowing us to get up and going and not worrying too much about what it costs to pay your taxes. But
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
just a
the grass seed farmer lease for all the land really only paid the property taxes on this place. So they let us lease the land at the same rate the grass seed farmer was leasing it. And like Ben was explaining, some of those grants, the federal government will lease the land from us for more than what the going rate is for farmland. So through like just direct benefit from having the family here, but kind of moving into the lease that they were accustomed to, and and paying the same rate as the grass seed farmer while making things more productive. Over the years, I mean, not everything's been slow. We've been slaughtering bison, selling hazelnuts to pay for our operation costs for sure. So yeah, we've been at market for a while and selling our products, but we've all lived in like really small, tiny homes, have some, none of us really have like big families right now. So just getting a lot of this infrastructure built before our personal costs are of such that we can't farm for free.
Any other questions from the group now?
Well, yeah, I was wondering, speaking of housing, how do you have all these different families living on the same land? If it's zoned exclusive farm use, you can only have one house, right?
So there's a couple houses on the land. My parents built a new house in like 2008, I believe. So yeah, there's a couple houses, and I have one on a trailer that's just mobile, and yeah, just not like expecting too much. Just enjoying, the great outside, and tiny house keeps it cozy. You don't need much firewood. But yeah, there's not a lot of like kids running around here at the moment, so we've been able to have that be kind of a lower concern.
It's not all one parcel, so there's other parcels that have residences on them. So yeah, so there's 3 houses and then tiny homes along the way.
I think we have time for one more question with the big group before we transition to some smaller conversations. Does anyone have a burning question?
Oh, I thought of another one. Did you buy your own no-till drill?
We do have a no-till drill. Yeah, we've done lots of planting with it. We've excuse me. We've had to be just very patient with it because a lot of times we're planting into something without preparing the ground per se. So a lot of times, yeah, it takes like 2 or 3 years for the clover to really like start showing up. But in the pastures, we're able to be pretty patient with it because we're transitioning so many over. And Yeah, it does a great job of getting the seed in the ground. It's definitely an investment, but we love it.
It's a 6-footer, so a lot of laps.
Where did you even find one around here?
Oh man, I'd have to ask my brothers.
Some soil and water conservation district actually have a no-till drill that they will lease out or rent out to farmers in their district.
Yeah, but not here.
Yeah, not
Austin says
everywhere.
he found it on Craigslist, like we find most of our things. So he found it on Craigslist a number of years ago and bought it off of Craigslist.
Stephanie, would you like to ask your question before we head into some small groups?
Sure, I'll say it out loud because like I can't type coherent sentences at this hour.
Don't even worry about it. I didn't catch it.
So yeah, Ben and Becca, thanks for sharing this evening. I was just wondering, and I'm sorry if I might have missed it, you mentioned it, but I was just curious, just kind of looking ahead in the next few years, is there anything like on the horizon as far as like challenges that you anticipate that you might be faced that you're kind of preparing for with regards to production or how you manage your operation?
Yeah, probably too long of a list for this conversation, but there's one probably for every crop. Hazelnuts, the biggest one for us is processing, getting enough volume that the processor actually wants to process our nuts and give them back to us, because they don't make money at when you don't bring enough to them. And yeah, I think luckily we're finally feeling like we're in a good place with the bison as far as like having enough land to manage that. And orchards, honestly, once they're up, we feel like they're pretty easy to take care of based on what we're doing down the road. So
I mean, a big thing
yeah.
this year is the cost of feed we're trying to get the farm where we're not bringing in a lot of external inputs, trying to be more self-sufficient here. So like the bison, we can be a little bit more insulated from the fluctuating global markets, unlike the pigs where we do bring in feed for them, and we don't grow our own feed for the pigs, so we're at the whim of what's going on in the world. So that's a huge issue this year. Trying to price out, how much will we have to actually sell our pork for. So we aren't sure what we're going to do. Our quotes have been extremely high, like really high this year. So trying to figure that out. And then the price of diesel for the tractors. So, all right, we just won't mow the orchards and see what happens. So yeah, I think the best thing that we're trying to do is be more insulated from those external inputs and try and keep our operation supporting itself from inside is the goal.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both. Thank you all so much. I thought, especially as we're getting on in this evening session, it would be great to start to get into smaller groups and talk a little bit more together. I'm gonna throw a Google Doc in the chat, which hopefully folks can click on and access. And that's just some guiding questions for folks to get in a breakout room. But mostly we want you to introduce yourselves to each other, and then maybe assign or have someone be more of a facilitator and then someone take on the role of note taker, so you can share back with us what you talked about. And play around with these questions. If they sound right and you want to talk about them, that'd be great. And if not, you can talk about other things. But we just wanted to create space for folks to get to know each other more and talk a little bit more. And with that, I think, do you have anything to add to that, Dominica, or have I missed anything?
Nope, we'll be in the breakout rooms for about 10 minutes and then we'll have 10 minutes to come back and kind of reconvene and do a little closing. So
Great, thank you. See you all in a moment in a breakout room.
I was able to put everyone in basically in two. So
Okay,
Becca's one and Ben's in the other.
okay. I still see Ben here.
No,
My-
Ben's too.
Okay, there we go.
Becca was the last one to zoom over
Ah,
last time too. So I
okay.
don't know if it's frozen or something, but
Yeah.
3 to 4 people in each room and then one
Okay.
of them in each one. So I figured that would give them just
Yeah.
opportunity to continue to ask questions and
Love it. Yeah.
excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, that was good.
Fun
A
to
lot
see all
of
that
information.
passion.
I know. They're really cool. They're really beautiful. Yeah.
Definitely.
I'm
I
excited.
wonder for future, I
Yeah.
haven't been when they get zoomed into the other rooms, I don't push pause on this recording. And so it's probably recording us right now.
I know. I was thinking about that. Maybe we should hit pause in the breakout room. Oh, and we're back on the recording. Welcome back. I want to hear how your conversations went. I didn't get a chance to be a part of them. Did you guys use the questions? Did you go off script and just talk about stuff?
We need more time, Ashley.
Yeah, I know. We went a little long in the other parts.
We
We'll
didn't
keep it
even
go-
get to the questions.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
we did the
this is
self-intro
helpful.
and that was it.
Ben and I could answer the questions and disseminate them via email so everyone gets their questions answered. And we can maybe write some stuff down and get that to you guys later this week, if that would be helpful.
Oh, I think you guys did answer like
Okay.
many of the questions that people brought to the conversation. I was kind of checking them over, but we have a couple minutes now. So if there's we can look at those questions again, or if people have other things they want to bring up now, we've got a few minutes.
Can I just plug Michelle with OPN for a minute?
Please,
And
yes.
have her say a few words about what she's up to. I just think it's pretty cool.
Yes, please.
Oh, you guys. Well, the Oregon Pasture Network is a program of Friends of Family Farmers, and we are a community of farmers right now, currently 75 farmers with almost 10,000 acres in pastured management. And we're really excited because we have amazing farmers like My Brother's Farm as a part of the network, just doing amazing things, going above and beyond, setting a really high bar for pastured agriculture in the state of Oregon with a focus on like local economies, as Becca mentioned, local food, the Oregon food web, local food, local meat processing. We advocate for farmers on the policy level. We do a lot of technical assistance and education. We have a lot of resources that we share with our farmers, and we're currently in our membership drive. So if you are a farm pasturing livestock in the state of Oregon, come see me.
They also have great classes.
We do. We just finished our spring class. We have one more, and it's free for everybody, and it's called Livestock Evacuation. So if you do have
Oh, great.
livestock, we're coming into fire season. You can
Mhm.
sign up for it. It's free. It's being facilitated by the district veterinarian for Oregon Department of Agriculture.
That's great to hear. And these guys from My Brothers know about a little, not about evacuating their own animals, but being home to other folks who need a space. So they didn't tell that part of the story about the wildfire season from 2020, but they were able to really provide support to the pastured, well, to smaller livestock producers, and I think in a really important way.
Quite the menagerie. But that's the importance of community, right? I mean, we all need to network and be together to support one another. We don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I think what we do know is that we're doing good work and want to share that knowledge and connect with one another so we can be there for each other moving forward.
Most definitely. Does anybody else have any other questions or things from their breakout room conversations that they wanted to share here? I'm trying to get comfortable with the quiet as it takes time for people to get off mute and things. Deborah?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that I've really appreciated the discussion tonight, and especially about transition. You know, it was just really nice to be among people that are also trying to do similar things with their land that we're trying to do. And so we were able to continue that with Ben, and then we got just a really good referral with Sharon.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so even though, you know, maybe we didn't hone in on exactly the subjects, which is great to hear about other people's farms and
good.
get some support and some ideas about how we could get help as well on the farm. So important discussion.
Oh, good. Glad to hear it. Yeah, my brothers, it's been so good at leveraging partners and in addition to community members. I think it's a really great model to look at for many reasons. So go ahead, Michelle. Yeah.
Can I also just give Sharon a big shout out?
Yes.
Because Living Earth Farm is also an OPN member and they're fantastic folks. I just wanted to say that. She's been to all of the classes, just amazing. I just want to say that.
And she's also a great advisor to Oregon Climate and Agriculture Network and has been helping us try to make these farmer to farmer sessions better and better each time. So with that, I guess I'll head into the closing. I just want to thank you all so much for taking time on this spring evening. I know as these days get so much longer, this isn't maybe quite the end of everybody's day anymore, but I really appreciate you all taking the time. We're experimenting here with these farmer to farmer conversations. Really look forward to your feedback. We want to make these great for everybody. I'll be sending out an evaluation tomorrow morning for you guys to reflect and let us know what we can do to do better. And couldn't do this without Dominica's help. She's been quiet tonight, but just really appreciate your help in getting this done. And again, Ben and Becca, I know you took some time out of your busy schedules to really dig into this and share. Yes, let's do a big round of applause, at least on the screen. And everybody here attending is doing such incredible work on your farms. And you know, Stephanie is doing great work for NRCS in Central Oregon. And one day we need to share that work too. So just really excited to have you all in this space. And thank you again for taking this time. It's going to take all of us to move forward on climate resilience in Oregon on our farms and ranches. So thank you.
Thank you, Ashley.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you, Ashley, for putting it all together.
no problem.
Yeah,
Thanks for
really
coming.
appreciate
everybody.
it.
Thanks.